Today, I'm going to be teaching you guys 4 tactical motifs that every chess player needs to know. At least one of these 4 motifs will appear in about 50% of your games, and once you learn to recognize them, your calculation and accuracy will immediately improve. Let's get started. Our first example here is deflection. Now, you might be asking, what is deflection? And the answer is pretty simple. Deflection is when you move a piece in order to distract another piece. Essentially, you would like to get the other piece to move from its original position, which would then lead to either a square that was previously being defended by this piece to be left undefended, or an attack to dissipate. Now, that sounds kind of complicated, so it's better to explain this through an example. So if we were to take a look at this position, where it's white to move, white has a very clear desired plan, and it's to take this pawn on h4, and then go to h7 and checkmate black. However, clearly this is currently impossible because the h4 pawn is protected by the queen on d8. And this is where deflection comes into play. White has the beautiful move rook b8, and as you can see, it's sacrificing a rook, but if black was to take this rook, h4 is no longer protected. White takes this pawn, and black actually does not have a singular resource he can use to stop himself from getting checkmated. So at this point, the game is effectively over because you were able to successfully deflect this queen from its d8 square. And if the queen chooses to not capture this rook, you can notice that there's not a single square to which this queen can go to that could continue to protect h4. Both e7 and f6 are protected by the knight, and g5 is protected by the bishop. So this doesn't really leave black with any other option other than to take or to sacrifice this queen and still lose the game. Another good example of deflection comes from an anti-London line where you play c5 on move 2. If we scroll through a couple of moves here, and by the way, this can occur in multiple positions, but after something like d5 and knight f3, white actually runs into the problem of bishop f5. And this looks like it's a simple blunder of a bishop, and technically that is true. If white chooses to capture this bishop on f5, black will take on b2, and now this rook hangs. Instead, the best move here is queen b3, but at this point, black has developed with tempo, and it's like very easy to argue that black came out of this opening slightly better. So deflection is a very, very useful tool. It actually shows up pretty often, and most people don't expect it because they don't really expect you to play a move where you're technically sacrificing a piece. But this is definitely something you should look out for because these tactics do show up, especially if you're playing in an aggressive position. Our next concept is that of a blockade. Now, what exactly is a blockade? And the very simple answer to that, and I know I keep saying it's very simple and it ends up being more complicated, but the blockade, it truly is a simple maneuver. It's simply when you try to stop a pawn from advancing. It's when you put a piece in front of a pawn to stop it from advancing. Now, I might have given it away here, but in this position, white really, really wants to play e5 in order to attack this h7 pawn with the bishop and queen, right? The problem with this is that black can play f5. f5 blocks this bishop from the vision of the h7 pawn, and you would think that, oh, I can just play en passant and still go and checkmate black on the next move. The problem is there's a queen on e8, and you end up losing your queen. So the best move in this position is just to trade queens, knight takes, and, well, the position's equal now. You didn't really achieve anything. However, in this position, there's an absolutely absurd move, which is rook f6. And this quite literally blockades this f7 pawn from pushing forward. The point being is that if black was to capture with the bishop, you play e5, notice f5 is no longer possible. This is a guaranteed checkmate. The best thing that black can do is stall for a move. Knight e4, bishop takes, h6, queen takes h6, king g8, and queen h7. It's checkmate. Black cannot do a single thing about this, and you end up winning the game. So blockading can be a very, very useful tool, and there can be some beautiful tactics such as this one where you play rook f6. And by the way, if black chooses to not capture and say play something like h6, you still have e5, and after, let's just say, knight c8, you have queen f5, and now you're throwing queen h7. So this tactic works out regardless of what black plays. It's not hope chess. You're still playing a very accurate move. And the reason that it works is because it blockades the pawn from going to f5. Now, an example of a more grounded blockade position is this, where white has an IQP. White intends to push this pawn further, and the best thing that in this position black can do is put a knight on d5. Simply blockade this pawn, and the position is completely fine. White is doing arguably a little bit worse. I mean, black should be doing a little bit better because the knight is more active than the bishop, and this a2 pawn is a weakness. Now, if you were to play something different, let's just say you take this pawn right away, right? This becomes a big problem. White is able to play d5 here. You can bring the queen back. It doesn't matter. You get hit with d6. You have to move around, and after queen f6, you can notice that white gets an extremely aggressive position from being able to push this pawn, which could have been easily stopped by blockading this pawn. So this position really shows the practical benefit of being able to blockade pawns, especially in IQP positions. And by the way, the IQP is a very common pawn structure, so Knowing that you have to blockade the square in front of the pawn in order to stop it from being pushed is a very important concept to learn and understand. Moving on to number 3, we have probably the most simple concept in this entire video. It's called overloading. And this is when a singular piece takes on the role of defending too many pieces at once. Now, in this very straightforward example, the piece that is being overloaded is this e6 pawn. It is responsible for protecting both this d5 bishop and this f5 knight, which is not something that I can realistically do. For example, you can play bishop takes f5, e takes f5, and then knight takes d5, and white wins the piece. And you can also get away with the exact opposite. You can play knight takes d5, e takes d5, and bishop takes f5, and just like that, you're also up a piece. Now, that is a very straightforward example. Let's take a look at an example of overloading from an actual game. Now, in this position is black to move, and the position looks extremely complicated. You can notice that black's queen is hanging, but also black has an extra pawn and has a pretty strong attack on white's king. However, if we take a closer look at this position, we will see that the c1 queen is overloaded. It is simply overworked. It protects both this d2 and e1 rook, and even the b2 pawn, although the rook also protects it, but still, that's not besides the point. This queen has too many things it's trying to protect. By the way, pause the video, try to figure the correct move out. And one thing that might help you out is if you actually combine the knowledge you got from our first tactical motif, which is deflection. The best move in this position here is rook takes c4. And because this queen is overworked, you can deflect it. So if queen takes c4, you have guaranteed checkmate. Queen takes e1, rook d1, queen takes, queen c1, queen takes. It's forced mate. White cannot do a single thing about this, right? And so, okay, well, what if white just takes this queen? Well, white gets checkmate on the next move. So what rook takes c4 does is essentially it deflects the queen away from the protection of this rook and gives black a forced checkmate. Now, of course, white doesn't have to deflect the queen and can go to b1, in which case, black plays queen f6 and black is up 2 pawns. After something like queen takes d3, for example, we can go through this line. You don't have to memorize any of this, but the point is, black ends up being up 2 pawns and is in a great position, whereas white has no counterattacks and is going to lose this game very quickly. So overloading is kind of one of those motifs which you can combine with deflection. But the point being is, if you see a piece that is being overloaded, try to look for tactics such as these, and you might win a bunch of games like this. Now, last but not least, we have interference, okay? And in this position, this is a very complicated looking position. It's black to move, so let me flip the board for you guys. Interference is when you put a piece in line of another piece, which will stop it from either defending a square or attacking a square. It is different from deflection because you're not forcing a piece to move away. You're simply putting your own piece in front of another piece. Basically, take a look at this position, try to find the correct move. I'm about to show it to you guys anyway. It's bishop d4. And why bishop d4? Bishop d4 cuts the queen off from being protected by the rook. So this is what interference is. There's a bishop now, which stops the queen from being protected. And white cannot take our queen because we end up taking this bishop with tempo, right? So now the king has to move somewhere. Wherever he goes doesn't really matter. You can just take this queen back and now you're up a piece. So that means that white cannot play the obvious exchange and has to do something else. But something like bishop takes d4, which would be the most natural exchange, simply isn't possible because now white ends up losing the queen. So instead of all that, black has to sacrifice the exchange by playing rook takes d4. Now the knight can take on d4. And after queen takes d8, knight takes e2. And this exchange, black is up an exchange and should win the game pretty easily. Now, an absolute beautiful example of interference is from this position where it's white to move. And white would love to get rid of this knight and queen so he could put a rook on g7. But unfortunately, that's not currently possible. And on top of that, black is threatening checkmate on f1. And so in this position, white plays the beautiful move knight f3. And the point is, this move quite literally interferes with black's ability to checkmate white on f1. So naturally, if black was to play something like queen takes f3, white would have rook g7, rook g7 takes g6, queen f6, and this would be a forced checkmate, right? Because here, after white takes this pawn, black is in check. And so the only thing that black can really do is to just sacrifice his pieces and get checkmated anyway. So this is an example of how interference can literally save games. I mean, it's a beautiful tactic here. Knight f3. If literally anything else, it doesn't really matter where black goes. Let's just say he moves the queen to c6 or something. It's the exact same tactic. Rook g7, king h8, rook takes g6, and queen f6. If not queen f6, then it's like, what else can you do? Rook f6, it's a forced move, and then rook g8, checkmate. So essentially, the best move according to the engine is to sack the queen for the bishop. And, well, at this point, it's 2 rooks versus 1. White should win this game very easily. And, ladies and gentlemen, that sums up the 4 tactical motifs I wanted to show you guys for this video. If you guys found this video useful, please consider liking and subscribing, maybe commenting, say something nice, or I don't know, say something mean. Whatever you say, it'll give me engagement, so I'll appreciate it. Check out my chess website. Chess Brain is going to be going through a lot of changes in the next couple of months, which are going to hopefully make it better. It's a chess improvement website. And I'm also doing one-on-one chess coaching, so if you guys are interested in that, send me an email at passbondsmail@gmail.com. Let me know your rating and your goals, and I'll get back to you and let you know if we're fit to be student and teacher. Guys, as always, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you guys. I really do. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.